Our guest today is the wonderful Carol Nolan Drake. She's been the head of her own consulting firm, Carlow Consulting, for the past 4 years. Before that, for about a decade, she was the Chief External Affairs Officer, the Corporate Governance Manager for Ohio's Public Employees Retirement System, OPERS. So she wears that in-house investor hat. I'm Brock Romanek. So Carol, this one is about kicking the tires. How can investors truly assess whether E&S, ESG issues are in a company's DNA? So should investors rely on one or more of the ESG rating services as a way to assess a company's E&S strategy, or do they need to do some of their own homework too?
Yeah, well, let me say investors are really good about reading the breadcrumbs, or finding the breadcrumbs around a company to see if it's really, authentic and in the company's DNA. And so they have several ways to assess if a company has that authentic approach to these issues. A lot of companies do post policies online. Now, they may not post some of the, I'd say more internal HR policies, but they post a lot outside the organization. And if they have a sustainability report, if they provide resources and they've hired someone, to be a chief sustainability officer, so obviously they have some budgeted dollars in that area. If similar position like that can help discern whether it's an authentic approach and it's part of the company's DNA. They have nothing devoted to it and they just do a glossy report once a year. Investors are going to be very easy to, understand that this really isn't important to the company. They just hired somebody to, put something out and pretend that it works. But also, investors engage with company representatives. And I always wanted to see if the responses tracked with the sustainability reports or the policies that I was reading about in the company. And if they don't match, they don't have to be in lockstep. And I never wanted anyone to just spout, company speak. But if there's something that doesn't quite align, that's kind of a red flag too, because investors do talk to one another as well. So the conversation I had with a company representative, unless it was confidential, others may say, "Hey, did you get the same feeling that something isn't quite right with that?" So companies also leave some other clues that go beyond, the statements and policies. I always say that the social media usage by employees and customers can be a real way to see if the company's DNA matches what the employees and customers are experiencing. If you go to the stores, you know that there are cameras everywhere, and we all have phones with cameras. And so it doesn't take too long for an issue between an employee and a customer to go viral. And from there, then you recognize the company better have policies and better follow through on those policies that it claimed were so important to the company's DNA. That happens every day. We see something on the news that someone filmed, and it may be, a lightning rod for change. So I think that's really important. Now, you mentioned about reports and whether investors should just read the reports and rating, the ratings and rankings that are out there, or whether they should do some of their own homework. And what I will say is the reports that are out there are full of good information. The challenge is there are so many reports. There are so many metrics. There are organizations across the world that are looking at E and S issues. And so even if you could possibly read everything and afford all these reports and studies, I'm not sure it's the best way to find out about a company's E&S strategy and whether it's really, in the DNA of the company. I think it's always important to engage company representatives and have a conversation about the report that, was provided by someone else, and then ask for their feedback about it. It may be that the report is accurate, or it may be there's a bit of a time lag from the time the report was generated to the time that you're having that conversation with the representative, and they might be able to update you and refresh that report in a way that you wouldn't have known if you had just read the report that was issued. And, that report could be 6 months old by the time you get ready to dust it off before proxy season. So your own research and your own experience with company representatives, I think, is really important.
So Let's drill down a little bit. You already talked about that investors might go beyond the report to kick the tires on a strategy. Can you drill down a little bit?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, as an investor, if a company is devoted time and resources to issuing a report, I need to crack it open and read it. Nothing burns any of us more as if you get in a meeting and then people say, well, on page 6, what did you think about that graph or chart? And you realize, that other person didn't even read page 6, or I didn't even, take time to read that. So it's important, if they've put time and effort in something, they did it for a reason, you should read it. But it is just a start. Those are reports from the company. It's just like the proxy statement. It can be 100 pages of really good information about the company, but it was written by the company. And what I want to do is compare the information that's out there from other sources, whether it's research from proxy advisory firms, media reports, conversations that I've had. It's all what I would call the 360 review of reports, and those touch points that are around there that really help you understand if there is something in this E&S report that is going to resonate, or it's not worth the paper that it's printed on. So I think too, the decision about whether you are going to look to other resources kind of comes to the reputation of the company, right? If it's a well-known company that seems to walk the walk, and we know that there are companies out there, right? We buy their products because we know that they believe in saving the environment, or they're trying to reduce their footprint, for environmental reasons, or they have a very strong social policy and they spoke out about some of these social issues. So you may not feel like you have to delve as deeply into the additional resources for that company's report, because you can see that on a daily basis they walk the walk, and the employees love working there and talk about what a great experience it is to work at that company. So it's kind of case by case in a way. Again, if you're investing in so many companies, you're not going to have the time and effort to do every single review that you need to. But for the ones where you have the most of an investment, or the ones where you're worried have risk, or they haven't thought about future growth and opportunities, then you're going to spend the time and resources on those companies.
And you have a wonderful vid guide separately about engagement on ESG issues. But let's talk about that a little bit now. What are ways during engagement that investors can assess about how sound a company's ESG strategy is?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest tells for me is whether the strategy can be communicated to me without the individual reading through a PowerPoint presentation or a set of slides and written materials. When Sally Curley and Sally is the founder and CEO of Curley Global IR, and I wrote one of our many articles on ESG, we coined the phrase reportable, repeatable, and auditable. And any ESG report or E&S strategy should really fall within those 3 parameters. Can the company representative state the strategy and what it really means to her? Everybody knows that a 2-minute elevator speech should always be ready when a company is trying to talk to an investor about something that's important. They should be able to say, what are the measures? How will the company know that it's working? How long will the company wait before checking on the strategy? When will they update the next report? You don't have to do it every year by rote. It may take 18 months or so for some of these, E&S strategies to develop, and that's fine. But you should be able to explain that we're not going to do it too soon. We're going to wait until we have something worthy to report. I always wanted to know too, how far up in the organization did this report go? Did the CEO see it? Did the board see it? Did they take a look at it? Did they have any viewpoint on it? Did they sign off? Is there, some sort of message inside the report from the CEO? And then for the risks that were identified in this review, what kind of steps were taken to make sure that those risks were addressed? And if you're sitting or in a meeting like this with an individual who can't answer those questions, I would say, I'm not really sure they know how sound that strategy is. And I think those are fair questions that they should take back and then find the right person in the company that can answer those questions for an investor.
Yeah, when you develop a 2-minute elevator pitch, you definitely have to practice it. And if it's been a while since you made the pitch, you need to have a refresher and get in front of the mirror or have someone pepper you with questions, perhaps surprise you and ask you the question, because you'll be surprised perhaps how you might have forgotten the pitch, even though you just gave it last week. It takes a little practice. So thanks so much for all your wisdom, Carol. Look for the other ESG videos that Carol has made. They're wonderful. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Brock.